What's up, guys? Mr. Slyway here on this gloomy Monday. A lot of rain, kind of nasty out. But we're going to go ahead and do our video lesson today on new political parties kind of popping up during this time period before the Civil War starts. All right, there's a lot of different reasons for that, so try to pay attention as we go along. Okay, first off, you've got that big tension going on between abolitionists, primarily in the North, and pro slavery individuals in the South. A lot of Americans are looking for a new outlet, a new kind of political group to join or party to join, because the current parties, the Whigs, we'll get into that, the Democrats, they don't really make up enough of a difference between each other. So there are individuals who are anti-slavery in the North who are really kind of looking for something new. All right? So we're going to get a bunch of new political parties out of this. So we'll start talking about that Whig Party, WHIG, right? It's one of the ones that's already there, but it's becoming more and more divided along northern and southern lines. It's becoming kind of split to the point where you have your northern Whigs who are really becoming anti-slavery and your southern Whigs who are still pro-slavery. And it's going to become really split over that Fugitive Slave Act that we talked about, the law stating that if a runaway slave is found on your property in the North, you have to bring them back to their owner in the South. All right. So the political parties are really going to get divided over that aspect. See, the Whigs split to Northern Whigs and Southern Whigs. Now we're going to get some new parties that didn't exist in the past also popping up. The first one we're going to talk about is what's called the American Party. The American Party, also known as the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner. That's kind of crazy sounding, but it's what they were known as. They were what are called nativists, okay? They didn't really care all that much about the slavery issue. Their bigger issue was that they were massively anti-immigrant. They did not want immigration. They did not want immigrants coming in and, in their words, taking their jobs, all right? So they became massively anti-Irish, anti-Scottish, anti-Italian, anti-German, and heavily anti-Catholic. So the American Party, there's a really good movie called Gangs of New York about this concept. But the American Party ends up popping up and being mainly a lot of northern anti-immigrant individuals. Okay, we also get the Free Soil Party, which opposes the spread of slavery into all new territories. They believe that soil should be free, that everybody should have a right to live there. So they are anti-slavery, all right? They're also kind of anti-Southern. The majority of the Free Soil Party members are from the North, and they're going to pop back up when we talk briefly about Kansas becoming a thing again, okay? So their bigger concern was not that they necessarily were all that morally opposed to slavery. It was more that they didn't want slaves moving into these new territories or these new areas and taking white individuals' jobs. All right, so it sounds like they're really nice on the surface, but kind of behind that, not so much. All right. Then you get the Republican Party. This is the birth of the Republican Party that we know of or think of it as today. All right. The Republican Party was really opposed to the Kansas-Nebraska Act. That act that kind of talked about slavery and whether or not slavery would be allowed via vote of people who lived there. All right? They wanted to restore the Missouri Compromise. Everything north of 3630 was automatically anti-slavery. All right? One of the interesting things about the Republican Party that gave them a lot of power is that it was really diverse. It had members from the American Party, it had people who left the Whigs, it had people who left the Free Soil Party. All right? So the Republican Party becomes so diverse that it can actually challenge for the presidency coming up in 1856. All right? And they do. You get the Republicans who name a man named John C. Fremont. If you remember him, he's the guy that invaded and took over California, all right, back during the Mexican-American War. They run John C. Fremont as their kind of chosen individual for the Republican Party, as their candidate, all right? The Democrats are going to run James Buchanan. James Buchanan. He is dominantly a Southerner. He supports Southern way of life. He's pro-slavery, okay? James Buchanan wins, and it's probably temporarily a good thing because had Fremont won, it's probable that the South would have gone ahead and seceded immediately without waiting longer until the Civil War actually kind of tips off. One of the major things that happens right around this period of time is what's called the Dred Scott case. Dred Scott is a slave in the South. He's owned by an individual in the South, and he lives in a slave state. Now, his owner is going to bring him to Wisconsin, a free state in the North. Okay? Dred Scott is pretty intelligent, and he decides he's going to sue that he should be set free because he was brought from a slave state in the South to a free state in the North. Therefore, he should be a free individual because he lived in that free state. So he sues, and it goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a major, major case for U.S. history and for tensions causing the Civil War. All right? The Supreme Court is going to make one of the most kind of racist, terrible rulings in U.S. history. They're going to rule that a slave has no rights because they are not a U.S. citizen. So because he was owned at one point, he is not a citizen of the United States. So he can't sue in the first place. B, he is considered property. And just like someone could bring their suitcase from the South to the North, or their clothing from the South to the North, because a slave is property, they can take their slave from the South to the North. So what this is essentially doing is saying that the Supreme Court is allowing slavery, or saying that slavery is legal throughout the entire United States. That is a massive issue, and is going to become something that really kind of triggers the Civil War. And it's going to cause issues to pop up in, of all places, Kansas again, right? You've got your pro-slavery versus anti-slavery people rushing to Kansas. We talked about that, to establish two different governments, Lecompton versus Topeka. Lecompton, pro-slavery, Topeka, anti-slavery, all right? So the Lecompton Constitution is going to be hugely pro-slavery. It's going to say slaves are not people. They can be bought, they can be sold, they can be traded. Here's where this is going to become an issue. President Buchanan, the Democrat, is going to endorse the Lecompton pro-Southern, pro-slavery Constitution. So we have the President of the United States basically endorsing slavery and saying slavery should be legal. All right? Stephen Douglas, the senator we talked about, who came up with that whole popular sovereignty idea, he's not necessarily opposed to slavery, but he's got a big problem with President Buchanan supporting this Lecompton Constitution because he believes in popular sovereignty, right? Stephen Douglas believes that everyone who lives in that area should have the right to vote. So he does. He rounds up all the people in Kansas and he gets them to vote on this concept. It happens. Kansas is voted to be anti-slavery. So Northerners, they view Stephen Douglas as this hero, this anti-slavery individual. Southerners view him as a traitor. Now, the importance of this is that Douglas has to kind of leave and become a member of the Republican Party because of this, all right? Douglas is up for re-election in the Senate, and a really young individual, a young senator, is going to decide to challenge him. This senator is a young guy from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is going to challenge well-known Stephen Douglas to a series of 7 debates, known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates, about slavery. Now, Stephen Douglas should not accept this challenge. Stephen Douglas is well known. He's already solidified as a really important political candidate. Abraham Lincoln's no one. No one knows who he is. He was a wrestler. He was a boxer. He was a woodcutter. He, worked in logging. No one knows who this guy is. He's from the middle of nowhere in Illinois. But for some reason, Douglas accepts this debate. All right? Douglas's points during the debate are that slavery's not immoral. It's not necessarily wrong, but it should be voted on. It's just unsuitable to new areas. It's good for the South, but not for new areas. He believes popular sovereignty, people should vote on slavery, and that it'll eventually kind of die out on its own. Lincoln goes after him, just directly goes after him in these debates, arguing that slavery's immoral, it's wrong, it's just bad. It's based on greed of individuals trying to get as much as they can, and that it needs to be outlawed and ended immediately, without question. Okay? Douglas's response is going to become known as the Freeport Doctrine, where Douglas says that slavery cannot exist unless it's supported by local police regulations. So if the police support slavery, then it can exist. Well, Lincoln's question, what then happens if the police don't? Is slavery just wrong? Is it just gone? Douglas has no answer. Douglas is going to win the debates, okay? But it's going to end up being a really kind of dumb decision for Stephen Douglas because it's going to make Abraham Lincoln a well-known individual, a big name throughout the entire United States, both in the North and the South, and it's going to kind of lift him or propel him into politics where people know who he is, they like him, they think he has a lot of good things to say, and it's going to lead to Abraham Lincoln eventually winning the next big election coming up for presidency, and we'll talk about that one tomorrow, okay? So hopefully you paid attention, and hopefully you're doing all right, and I'd say get outside and enjoy the weather today, but kind of sucks, so get your work done inside. See you later.